Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. I am Harrison, the in-host analyst here at the Overlap, and today we're here to take you through everything we've learnt so far from Xabi Alonso's first games as Chelsea manager in pre-season, and luckily we've got quite a lot of them to dig through. But just before we get into this, I want to say to you watching at home, thank you very much for all the constant support. We've just hit 60,000 subscribers as of yesterday, so very much thank you, and honestly, it's a dream to come up here and do all this, and we're actually building somewhat of a community now. Everyone in the comments, there's really good debates going on. We try our best to stay up to date with all the comments, reply to all the comments, and yeah, just can't thank you enough for obviously the summer we've had. I think we've gone past 11,000 subscribers in the last 3 months, which is absolutely insane. So yeah, really putting us on the map when it comes to all this tactics stuff, and apparently you lot actually really like my opinion. So yeah, we're here to do Xabi Alonso now. Now, this is a really interesting one because just before we jump into this, I was watching it, and obviously the main talking points are is Xabi Alonso going to play a 3-4-3? Is he going to play 4-2-3-1? Is he going to play 4-3-3? That's really been the main topic of debate. But when I was watching Chelsea's pre-season games, and I actually watched one of them back twice, because I actually felt that this is a team that I think Xabi Alonso is trying to almost find the next way of playing football, the next modern way. And I think when I was listening to a lot of his press conferences, he's reiterated the same points in them press conferences. I've got a question. He got asked twice in the matter of 2 games. You know, are you going to use 3-4-3? What's the deal? Are you going to play 4 at the back? Whatever. He said it doesn't matter the system. It's more the flow of the team and the principles. We want to be versatile in our approach. So I think that works very well, but I'll keep developing ideas. In a different quote, he also said, the system is just a picture. You need to move, rotate, and create dynamics in the team, and that is where the picture becomes a movie. We are not just sticking to one idea, and the more options we have, the better the team will be. So in my just original straight out the block thoughts on Xabi Alonso is that he's trying to build something of like a little bit total football in the way he's talking. And to basically put it into simple terms, total football was obviously the Ajax way of playing, and it meant that pretty much everyone on the pitch could do each role. So the attackers could defend, the defenders could attack. There was overlapping runs from deeper positions. There was deep runs from certain areas of the pitch. We'll go on to talk about obviously Palestra's role at Chelsea, what he's been able to do there, how he's working with Xabi Alonso, the way in which Xabi Alonso's chopping and changing between a 3-back, a 4-back, but it still has the same feel. Caveat to that is, this looks great when it works, and we've obviously got to mention that Chelsea have no European football, and we were speaking about it, me and the producer, and we were like, so you've got 1 game a week, surely it's just better to have a system that works and find it what suits the majority of the players the best, it gets the best out of them players, and then just go week to week and just pick up points and just build a little bit of a rhythm. Xabi Alonso's trying to do that with also changing everything within the structure. And on paper, the structure has been changing throughout the pre-season games. We've seen a 4-2-3-1, like I've got it set up on the board. We've seen a little bit more with 1 sitting midfielder, 2 ahead. We've obviously seen that 3-4-3 in the AC Milan game, where the wing-backs come in, you've got the 2 pocket players, and you've got your 2 wingers a little bit more like this, with the pocket players a little bit more narrow. We've seen Chelsea defend in a 5-2-3 like this, is what we often seen his Leverkusen team do. But then we also seen them play 4-4-2 against Spurs like this and play a little bit more natural off the ball and a little bit more of a familiar system. So even though Xabi Alonso, and bearing in mind, he's an absolutely unbelievable manager, obviously a lot better than me, but he obviously knows what he's doing here. But you can't really say, in my opinion, that it's not about the system if that system is genuinely changing where the players stand, both on and off the ball. And I want to get into that because I think it's a really interesting thing what Xabi Alonso is trying to do. At worst, it can look like a team with no ideas, no core principles, no schemes, no patterns of play. But then at best, it can look like a team that does everything. And I think we've seen both of them patches at Chelsea so far under Xabi Alonso. And I want to run you through, basically, straight away, what are the key things that we've seen with these ideas of principles? What are the key elements that Xabi Alonso, in my opinion, is trying to get across when I watched him? Straight away, on the ball, no matter the system, there seems to always be this essence of 3 build-up players, 2 in front, and then the 5 ahead it just looks very different from game to game. Oftentimes we've seen Danny Welbeck play a little bit more into the pocket like this, Nicholas Jackson as well, João Pedro a little bit more off-centred. Sometimes there's been an element of like staggering, so maybe this left back can actually stay a little bit deeper, the left winger actually goes pins wide, but then the right backs are way more forward, and it looks a little bit more lopsided, as you can see here. The key elements that I've noticed straight away from Xabi Alonso's Chelsea are the principles that we've obviously picked up from his Leverkusen team, from his Real Madrid team, and one of them straight away is the third man combination. So in this 3-4-3 or the 4-2-3-1, because they use these wide centre halves to step into these moments with usually two sitting midfielders in front, there is now a learning in this Chelsea team already from either direct play or more on the ground, slower tempoed play, to work the press. And to work the press, what I mean by that is to basically entice the pressure, bring the pressure onto, and then actually cutting through the pressure to open up bigger spaces to your more, advanced attacking players who are running in behind. So I've got an example against Juventus here, and I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So on this picture, we can see that Palestra is moving the ball back towards the centre-halves. Now, this is in the game against Juve. So Chelsea, in this game, as a structure, they played 4-2-3-1. So this is how it looks. Palestra, we can see, feeding the ball back into the central defender. And then when the ball comes back into the middle of the park, we can see that Chelsea now playing that 3-2 with the three sitting players, with the left back tucking inside, the two centre-halves. And then Caicedo is actually coming and making up a little bit of that depth in behind where Palestra has actually ran into to crash into space. So he's a little bit more staggered like that. So you see these elements of overloading one side of the pitch, and this could be right to isolate the left. Now, these are all core principles of a player who's worked under Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola, managers like that. So in this aspect right here, we can see the idea of the third man. We can see the idea of overloading. So when the ball comes in to the midfielder here, the Juve player then steps up to press that centre-half. He works his body angle, so he's trying to deny the ball going into Caicedo with a curved run. But when that ball is played in like that, the first time pass to work the ball behind that initial pressure comes, and then they can step into the space. And that is exactly what happens here. Chelsea work it, third man combination, and again, ahead of the ball now with Caicedo, he's running into space. Two players out the game for Juve. They're a little bit more unorganised in their defensive approach off the ball. And ahead of the ball, what we've got is Esteval dropping in to receive it. But then we also have the flip side of this. And then when Alonso was talking them quotes about dynamic movement, what does that look like? Well, this in a nutshell is a counter movement. So we've got Esteval, who's maybe coming deeper to get the ball off Caicedo. So if Caicedo's pushed here, we're looking to work that pressure. So someone's got to go with Esteval. But then in behind, Marco Palestra actually has that run into the opposition's third, gets in behind. It's a 1v1, and unfortunately, Chelsea don't actually convert this against Juve. But they've opened up a space and worked a 2v1 on the last line against Juve in that situation right there. So if we just move it back, and we're going to move quite fast through the examples, because as I've said before, this is a team that is at best one that is easily identifiable with loads of different, facets of play, loads of patterns, but it can also look quite messy in terms of what we're actually looking for, because principles aren't as easy to map out and explain as if I shown you a 4-4-2 block with lines between each player. That's really easy for you to understand. With Xabi Alonso, what we're analysing is he wants us to not focus on the structure. As fans, as analysts, as pundits, whatever, he wants us to focus on the principles, the flow, the connections. So straight away, I've gone and shown you an example that happened in a 4 at the back that was built in a 3 and then used deep runs from a fullback on the right-hand side, where in another picture that could look like a right winger crashing into that space in a 3-4-3. So it's very, very interesting and very, very hard to pick up on these points if you're not looking for a clear structure. And it is pretty hard to identify down to a T what they are looking to do. So again, this is a different example. This is against Milan when they played up against Ruben Amorim's team. They played in the 3-4-3. On your screen right now, does that look like a 3-4-3 to you? Because to me, that looks like a 4-2-3-1 or a lopsided 4-2-3-1. So we can see how Chelsea have now massed that build-up out. They've gone 4 wide with 2 in front. So they built in this is what they started in, but then they've also ended up playing like that. With your 2 sitting midfielders in front, this is coming from the goalkeeper, and it doesn't matter, in his opinion, if this is a winger, if this is a central midfield player. They are building with these flows and connections, okay? Now, what we're looking for is the ability, as we mentioned before, to overload one part of the pitch, to congest on one part of the pitch, play in small areas, and then to isolate one side. So this is a common theme you often see with Guardiola teams. This is why the wingers are tasked with staying so high and wide and pinning and creating that tension between the opposition's block and asking the question of, is this player going to stay here if the ball's over there, or is he going to go there? Because if he goes there, that leaves that player open for that switch. That is what happens in this example I've got on your screen right now. So again, building up from deep, as you would think about it, it's a 4-back. The ball comes into the right centre half, and again, we've got that chain reaction of that movement. So we've got one player running nearer to the ball, and then we've got 3 players ahead of it who are actually looking to spin in behind. It comes into Nicholas Jackson, and then obviously because that player has gone nearer to the ball, because he's worked that pressure, the direct response of a deep run is to turn the other way or to run the other way. Nicholas Jackson spins on the ball against the centre halves, crashes into the space, and then Chelsea can attack with 4 across the last line. And who have we got on the other side of where this play originated? Marco Palestra, who's there as the +1 on the back post. He receives an in-swinging ball, and he probably should do better with this chance in totality. So straight away, what we've got is the principles of this team. If he doesn't want us to analyse structure, and I'll go on it in a little bit to talk about why structure does matter, especially off the ball. But in that screenshot, in that example we've just shown on the screen, we've got a team that likes to build up through the thirds, have runs ahead of the ball, both going nearer to the ball and further away to the ball. And then we're looking to attack space with the wingers or them wide players, because they're not always wingers, pinning really wide like this and creating them gaps between that opposition block like that. And if the gaps actually close like this and they want to play a little bit deeper, especially when there's bigger space to be hit, then you get, for example, that example we got from Marco Palestra, where he's a +1 on the end of the opposition block with space to attack into. So straight away, I understand that this is a really, really complex team. In the current state, in the current time of recording, when I was watching Chelsea, it was really hard to pin what they're doing on the ball. It was really hard to pin. So if I'm an opposition analyst, I don't know if that team comes into a game and they are playing 3-4-3, but they are moving to a 4-back, and then the left back is taking up a left wing position, and then the left winger's coming inside and playing in midfield. I don't know how much you can plan for that or how much you can stop that. Obviously, Chelsea could stop them themselves by getting it confused, by getting it wrong in there. But if I just push this up a little bit more to just talk about generally what they were doing on the ball, if I talk about maybe even the Juve game, even the Spurs game, in that game, I saw different types of things. I saw Caicedo maybe coming and standing over here to push on the right back. I saw maybe Cole Palmer coming and standing in midfield to get the ball off the centre half like this. I was seeing longer balls from the goalkeeper directly into the number 9. But then I was also seeing the centre half trying to break through lines like this. They like to use deep runs from deeper starting positions. I've got an example to show you again what them runs look like. And these are all the bits that, if you have a team that can do all facets of the game, and bearing in mind we're talking about a Chelsea team that finished 10th last season, it's going to take a massive jump to get to a team who can be at that respected point of, well, we can do everything. We can't really, compete with them in there. Don't get me wrong, it might take a little bit of building, but I think the ceiling is so high for a team that wants to try and do that. I very much look at Michael Carrick's United in that similar way, in terms of there's not much rigidity or structure placed on each player as to where to stand, to where to go. And that improvisation from players like Palestra, players like Quenda, even players in midfield who can go and stand between the centre-halves like Lavia, Hato, stuff like that, Jackson, João Pedro. There's a reason why João Pedro's looked great this pre-season. Not just because he's an unbelievably good player, but he's also able to do a lot of the stuff in front of the defence. He doesn't have to stay as a stable, static number 9. He can go and look for the ball here, go and look for the ball there. He can play right nearer to the ball if it's over here. And them ideas that there's no real positional cues for the players to be going and standing in and occupying in does create that sense of unpredictability. I'm going to move on into off-the-ball stuff now. So this is a little bit more as to where I was keen on learning about the structure, because off the ball, I think if you have a structure, it's a really good, obviously, like pathway to build on, to go into. Straight away, what I'll mention about Xabi Alonso's Chelsea, initially when I watched them, is they are so man-to-man, like so man-to-man. Whether it's a 3, whether it's a 4, whether they're defending 4-4-2, 5-2-3, which I'll go on to speak about. They are so man-to-man across all phases of the game. Against Spurs, they let Spurs have that deep build-up, because obviously against the De Zerbi team, you're going to let them have a little bit more of the ball in these deeper areas, but then when it's brought through into the midfield, then you can jump onto it. But I've got an example of what it looks like when it works against AC Milan. So right here, we can see this is a 5-2-3 press. So right on your screen, we can see that. We've got the narrow front three. Palestra's running back with his man down the side. Neto is the opposite-sided wing-back. And as the ball works its way out to the left-hand side, to Pavlovic, Chelsea look to jump. You can see Cole Palmer's eyes in this picture, looking over his shoulder to see if he's getting that backup pressure from Pedro Neto. So this is clearly an instructed man-to-man press for the wing-backs to jump onto their wing-backs and so on. So when that press comes, Cole Palmer looks to shunt it out to the right-hand side. Pedro Neto steps up, but then the right centre-half of Rafael Leao actually comes and goes in, right all the way in. And he gets that back pressure and Chelsea can turn over the ball. But that right centre-half is stepping all the way into midfield and beyond. So the ball is won, and then Chelsea, from this position, go and bring the ball back to the goalkeeper, bring it to the defence, and then they can turn their possession structure into their own. So again, this returning screenshot now, what have we got? It's the same structure as what we mentioned before. 3 build-up players, 2 in front, and a line of 5. And already on this line of 5, you can see someone trying to make that direct run in behind, giving them a reference point to hit. And then the ball is tried to get hit long, ball is knocked down. I'm sorry this is such a long one, but you'll get what I mean when I talk about it. Then AC Milan look to do the exact same thing as the first screenshot. They're looking to bring it out through the left side of their back three. What happens? The Chelsea press comes all the way through. Again, look at where the centre-backs are stood. Look at where the wing-backs are stood. I'll highlight them on your screen. They are so far in with the press. AC Milan then look to work it on the other side of the press. The left centre-half is still in there, the same as the right centre-half. They are all the way in. So this is a team that wants to go man-to-man in a lot of phases of the game. A lot of phases. So on your screen right now, I'm going to show you a 5-2-3 defensive shape from Chelsea against Ruben Amorim's 3-2-5 for AC Milan. And you can see just how tight every player is in that situation to their men. So that is a clear man-to-man reference point of what they are looking to do when they go to press. This is something that also happens when the ball is worked the other way. So I've just mentioned that I've been talking about Chelsea playing in a 5-2-3. So this is how they were pressing. If I just work it a little bit, one sec. This is how they were pressing AC Milan. If the opposition's got the ball, they were pressing with 5 across the last line, and then if someone come and stood in behind the midfield here, and the centre midfielders went, wingers and forwards went, that right centre half has got to go in. That is a non-negotiable of a Xabi Alonso team. In the screenshots we've seen both wide centre halves doing it in response to the pocket players of Amorim dropping in between the lines. That is something that they will do all the time in the Premier League. And another thing is it didn't just happen in the 5-2-3. So I'm going to show you that again. This is now the Tottenham game, where they're 1-1 against Tottenham, and we can see, I've just got different stills to show you what this looks like. In the first still, we've got Oswego, who's the right central midfielder of Chelsea in a 4-4-2 block. So it starts as a 4-4-2. He's going and standing between the centre-half and the full-back, and he's creating a back five. So even though they've not started in a 3-4-3, they go to make it a back five. So this player, whilst it could be Josh Achampong, now it's Oswego stood there and the ball's over there. Again, another example of that, 4-4-2 block on your screen right here. We can see just how much this looks like a 4-4-2 against Tottenham. This is a minute after the last screenshot. Roll it on a couple seconds. Where's Esteval stood? Between the centre-half, between the full-back. So yeah, as you can see, this is a team under Xabi Alonso that want to do all the right things, if you can class it as that, all the right things. They want to press in every phase. They want to go man-to-man. They want to fill out the back line. They want to give depth. They want to attack with depth. They want to rotate in attack. And for me, this is a team that you could see at one game a week have a brilliant season. One that you could see just becoming unthinkable in all phases because he's got that many players to work with. And I know Chelsea fans hate that, but they do. He's got that many different players to work with, different dynamics. I mean, I saw Quenda play right wing back and right midfield. I almost forgot they had him. Do you know what I mean? And that's a player I watched in, U21's World Championships where he was incredible, or the Euros, sorry, and he was absolutely incredible. They had Gittins playing left wing, then they had Danny Welbeck and João Pedro up front, and then they introduced Lavia and Asuego, and they're still missing Enzo Fernandez, but Caicedo's there. And then you look at the defence, they've got Hato, Tosin, Fofana, Lacroix's going to come back in. Reece James hasn't even played a pre-season game. They've signed Palestra on one side. So it's like there's just so much, and they're signing that Spanish wing back. There's just so many different options, and I think that's what he's trying to lean into, that variety. We've often had managers at Chelsea who come in and they complain about that, but how do you turn that hand and how do you make it a more favourable hand? And I think that's by playing a system that can basically be very versatile and very dynamic between each game. And I think that is what he's trying to accomplish because he's got so much to work with. So, yeah, again, I just want to show you on your screen right now another example, and this is again talking about that man-to-man pressure. When we were talking about it against AC Milan and Tottenham, this is the game against Juventus. Again, they started off in a 4-back, but we can see here, Chelsea are looking to actually use the body position. So when they're pinning up against a goalkeeper press or a goalkeeper kick, they're looking to curve the run. So João Pedro is looking to curve and block off the right side of AC Milan. That triggers a response in everyone behind him to follow up that pressure. Now, this is a clear reference point of man-to-man. The player who is stood on the 6-yard box for Juve in this picture goes and runs from centre-half. This is a Spalletti team, so they do this a lot. The centre-half goes and runs from this position and just goes and runs into midfield like that. He is followed all the way by the Chelsea player. And when the ball is actually knocked one further, you'd think that Palestra maybe is going to be pinned back in this position over here by AC Milan's right winger. He's not. Because Juve likes to use pretty narrow wingers, he's all the way into midfield with that man-to-man pressure. He wins the ball back and Chelsea turn this into a direct opportunity for Quenda. So that is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this sort of versatility that Chelsea are doing this pre-season with. They are pretty hard to analyse. Like if you're not looking for the principles, as we say, if we're not looking for the patterns, if you're constantly looking at the shape and the way they are being used, they are quite hard to guess where people are going to pop up. Palestra's played right and left. Sometimes he's the furthest forward. There's just different dynamics, and I think I would say this is a team that, if it works, looks incredible, but at its worst, it can look unidentifiable and it can look lost and it can look lost of patterns. But I think early on, what I will say is that they have just got a little bit more. Their cues are a little bit better. That's what I'm saying. Their cues are a little bit better. The principles are identifiable. I can see what they're trying to do in some aspects of the game, and one of that is movement behind the opposition's back line and constant runs and constant pace. So just before we wrap up, we've got this example against Western Sydney. Now, this is a really good example. So on the left-hand side, we can see that they're bringing the ball forward. There is a run from deep. So you can see on the first picture, there's a scan over the shoulder because he's looking at the man he's pulling out. He pulls out that man and then he makes space for that underlapping player right there. We can see him running between the centre-halves. He doesn't get it, the ball works backwards. They then swap back around. So he comes back into his original starting position and they swap back around. But what happens then is the ball is overloaded on that right side, as we said before. It's overloaded on this right-hand side. But the runs, so you can imagine, if he's out here wide, the run comes from deep like that, he doesn't get it, then he comes over here to fill his spot, and then they swap back around like that. The ball is still on the right-hand side, but the principle for both of these players is to attack depth. Doesn't matter which one it is. The run comes in behind, and he ends up in an absolutely unbelievable position, again, like Palestra, in that +1 on the far side to attack and to get a goal from it. Well, he gets a shot from it, he doesn't get a goal. But that is what I mean. These are types of, they're really hard to, pinpoint. They're really hard to, look at tactically. But I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to make a side that is unpredictable in its movement. It can press man-to-man in all phases. They can set up in a 3-4-3 if they're maybe playing up against a 3-back, because against Amorim's 3-back, they played exceptionally well in terms of pressing it back and going man-to-man. They can also overload certain parts of the pitch. So if they want a right-hand-sided bias to put Palestra further forward and maybe push on Josh Akchempong into right-back zones, that's what they can do. But then they can also do that on the left side. And then God knows how it will change when Morgan Rogers is thrown into there. So, yeah, a really interesting team. And I really did have fun analysing them, because when you sit down to analyse teams and you can't quite go, well, it's 4-2-3-1 and the right back goes forward and the left back tucks in. at least then you know what you're planning for, you know what you're looking at, you know how to stop it. With this Chelsea team, they are doing so much. And I know I've said this a million times in the video, but they're doing so much. And it's really hard for an opposition team to look at it and work out what it is that's going on. So that's when the trust comes down to the individual quality on the pitch for Chelsea and the trust within the players. So, yeah, really interesting team. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch this season. I think this could be a team that you see trying so many different things. Some will look beautiful, some will look really bad. Sometimes he'll play 5 defenders, sometimes he'll probably play 1. And it feels like a really exciting and entertaining to watch team. And I think he almost knows that, Xabi Alonso, going in with, no European football. I think he almost knows that there's a baseline of performance and points if he needs to work it with the system. So, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this piece. Honestly, really, really, really did enjoy watching them in terms of sort of just some of the really niche ideas. And I've not really gone through all of them because there's a lot more stuff on the ball, but I'm sure we'll touch on Xabi Alonso's Chelsea a lot more throughout the season and maybe even before the season starts again. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching this episode of the Overlap Breakdown. If you did enjoy, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And we're back next week for some more analysis. Thank you.
This has been a Global and the Overlap production.